Hello class 8 students. Today we are going to do the chapter Merchant of Venice. We have already started in our online class and you already know the whole story. So once again we are going to revise this whole chapter through videos. Merchant of Venice. Shylock, the Jew, lived at Venice. He was a usurer. As I have already said, usurer is a person who would lend money and take a very high rate of interest, unreasonably high rate of interest, who had amassed an immense fortune by lending money at great interest to Christian merchants. Shylock, being hard-hearted, exacted the payment of the money he lent with such severity that he was much disliked by all good men, and particularly by Antonio, a young merchant of Venice. And Shylock as much hated Antonio because he used to lend money to people in distress and would never take any interest for the money he lent. Therefore, there was great enmity between this covetous Jew and the generous merchant Antonio. Whenever Antonio met Shylock on the Rialto, he used to reproach him with his usuries and hard dealings, which the Jew would bear with seeming patience while he secretly meditated revenge. So in the very first paragraph, we find that there is a marked difference between the characters of Shylock, the hard-hearted moneylender, and Antonio. Whereas Shylock is a moneylender who used to lend money to Christian merchants at a very high rate of interest, and he had made a lot of wealth with that. Antonio, who was also a merchant of Venice, a young merchant of Venice, he would also lend money to people, and if he lent money to poor people, he never took any interest for it. And because of his cruel nature, Shylock was hated by all people, whereas everybody had a great respect for Antonio, and Antonio also hated Shylock. So whenever they met each other at the exchange or the Rialto, Antonio would always scold Shylock for his usuries, and the way he dealt with people, that is, he exacted his interest to the last bit. He would never see to it whether the person is able to pay or not. Now whenever Antonio would scold or rather abuse him, Shylock would never react in any way, but he in his heart of his heart he would try to seek revenge on Antonio. Antonio was the kindest man that ever lived, and best conditioned, and had the most unwearied spirit in doing courtesies. Indeed, he was one in whom the ancient Roman honor more appeared than any that drew breath in Italy. He was greatly loved by all his fellow citizens, but the friend who was nearest and dearest to his heart was Bassanio, a noble Venetian, who having but a small patrimony, had nearly exhausted his little fortune by living too expensive a manner for his slender means, as young men of high rank with small fortunes are apt to do. Whenever Bassanio wanted money, Antonio assisted him, and it seemed as if they had but one heart and one purse between them. So Antonio was a person who had all the qualities which make for a perfect person. Okay, he was very kind-hearted. He was he was always willing to help people, and everybody liked Antonio, and he had a friend whose name was Bassanio, Rather, Bassanio was the nearest and dearest friend of Antonio. And since he was the nearest and means Bassanio was the nearest and dearest friend of Antonio, what means Bassanio was also a noble Venetian, and he had inherited a very small property from his father, but he he led such an extravagant life that he spent that fortune very soon and was left with nothing. So whenever he needed money, he would go to Antonio, and Antonio would always give it to him without even asking a question. It was as though they had means they were two people, but whatever belonged to Antonio belonged to Bassanio. One day Bassanio came to Antonio and told him that he wished to repair his fortune by a wealthy marriage with a lady whom he dearly loved, whose father, that was lately dead, had left her sole heiress to a large estate, and that in her father's lifetime he used to visit at her house when he thought he had observed this lady had sometimes from her eyes sent speechless messages that seemed to say he would be no unwelcome suitor. But not having money to furnish himself with an appearance befitting the lover so rich an heiress, he besought Antonio to add to the many favors he had shown him by lending him 3,000 ducats. So one day Bassanio came to Antonio and asked for 3,000 ducats, and the reason was that Bassanio had fallen in love with a very rich lady, okay, and she and whose father was lately dead, but as long as when that lady's father, whose name we will know was Portia, when he was alive, Bassanio used to go to their house, and he also understood that it was not only that Bassanio liked Portia, but Portia also liked Bassanio. So to give himself a befitting appearance, so as to match such a rich lady, he needed that 3,000 ducats. So he had come to Antonio to borrow that money. Antonio had no money by him at that time to lend his friend, but expecting soon to have some ships come home laden with merchandise, he said he would go to Shylock, the rich money lender, and borrow the money upon the credit of those ships. But Antonio was unable to give the money because his ships were all at sea. And but he said that it doesn't matter, we'll go to Shylock and we will borrow the money, and as soon as my ships come back laden with merchandise, that is a lot of goods, a lot of wealth, I can easily repay the money to Shylock. Antonio and Bassanio went together to Shylock, and Antonio asked the Jew to lend him 3,000 ducats upon any interest he should require, to be paid out of the merchandise contained in his ships at sea. So they all both went to Shylock and said that please give me that 3,000 ducats, okay, lend me that 3,000 ducats, and you can charge any interest that you like, because I can easily pay that from the merchandise that the ships would be bringing back to me. On this Shylock thought within himself, if I can once catch him on the hip, I will feed fat the ancient grudge I bear him. He hates our Jewish nation. He lends out money gratis. Gratis means for free. And among the merchants he rails at me and my well-earned bargains, which he calls interest. Cursed be my tribe if I forgive him. Antonio, finding he was musing within himself and did not answer, and being impatient for the money, said, Shylock, do you hear? Will you lend the money? So Shylock was, so long Shylock had, uh, you know, born with seeming patience, but he had always meditated revenge. So Shylock thought that this was the opportunity, and if I can take revenge on, if somehow I can take revenge on Antonio, then I will, not let that opportunity go out of my hand. So he was, thinking that that Antonio hates our nation, he abuses me, and all these things. So when Antonio saw that Shylock was, just thinking within himself, then, Antonio said, yes, Shylock, will you lend the money? You know. So therein we stop here today. We'll do the rest of it in the next class. Thank you.